The moment his arm dropped around her waist, I knew this reunion would be more than a trip down memory lane. 20 years of marriage, and I'd never seen Nora light up like that. Not for me, anyway. "We should have never broken up," Trent Ardell said, his voice carrying that same cocky confidence that probably got him elected homecoming king back when the world was younger and stupider. She laughed, actually laughed. The sound hit me like a slap across a quiet room. I set my drink down on the nearest table, some overpriced cocktail that tasted like regret and artificial cherry, and straightened my tie. The polyester blend felt cheap against my fingers, a reminder that project managers don't make construction CEO money. Not like Trent. The Marriott ballroom buzzed with the forced enthusiasm of middle-aged people pretending their best years weren't behind them. Streamers in school colors hung from the ceiling like wilted dreams, and a DJ who probably graduated with us played hits from our supposed glory days. The whole scene reeked of desperation masked as nostalgia. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was the way Trent's hand rested on my wife's hip like he owned her. What mattered was how she leaned into him, her body language screaming things I didn't want to understand. I walked over, each step measured and deliberate. My shoes, comfortable Skechers, not Italian leather, made soft sounds against the hotel carpet. Around us, conversations continued, classmates catching up on divorces and career changes, kids and mortgages, normal people living normal lives. I wasn't feeling particularly normal. "Holden!" Nora spotted me approaching, her smile faltering just enough to notice. "I was just catching up with Trent. You remember Trent Ardell, right?" Remember him? How could I forget the guy whose name came up in conversations more often than mine did? The one whose construction company somehow landed every major contract in our county? The one whose sister had been sending me very interesting text messages for the past 6 months. "Of course I remember Trent," I said, extending my hand. His grip was firm, probably practiced in boardrooms and country club handshakes. "Good to see you again." "Likewise, man. Nora was just telling me about your work on the Henderson project. Sounds like you're doing well for yourself." The Henderson project. The one Nora had insisted we recommend Trent's company for. The one that earned him a 7-figure contract while I got a pat on the back and a modest bonus. Funny how these things work out. "I do what I can," I replied, keeping my voice level. "Speaking of which, I was just thinking about what you said, about how you two should never have broken up." Trent's chest puffed out slightly, the way roosters do when they think they've won something. "Well, you know how it is. Sometimes you don't realize what you had until—" "I agree completely," I interrupted, my smile growing wider. "You should have stayed together. Then I would have married your sister instead. She's been texting me for months." The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Nora's face went through several interesting color changes: confusion, recognition, then something approaching panic. Trent's arm dropped from her waist as if she'd suddenly become radioactive. "What?" Nora's voice came out smaller than usual. "Arielle," I clarified, still smiling. "Your sister-in-law, Trent. Well, ex-sister-in-law, I suppose, since her divorce finalized. She's been very communicative lately." Trent's eyes darted toward the ballroom entrance, probably looking for his sister. She wasn't here, smart woman. But her evidence was, sitting in my phone like a loaded weapon I'd been carrying for months, waiting for exactly this moment. "Holden, what are you talking about?" Nora stepped closer, her PR executive instincts kicking in. Damage control mode. I'd seen it before, usually when she had to clean up messes for her clients. Never thought I'd be on the receiving end. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the folder labeled Arielle. Screenshots filled the screen, text messages, photos, bank statements, hotel records, a digital paper trail of betrayal stretching back years. "Should I start with the messages between you two from last month?" I asked conversationally. "Or maybe the hotel records from the reunion 5 years ago? You know, the one where I stayed home with the flu while you had such a wonderful time reconnecting with old friends. The music seemed louder now, or maybe everything else had gotten quieter. Conversations around us continued, but I could feel the subtle shift that happens when people sense drama brewing, like sharks detecting trace amounts of trouble in the water. "Holden, you're making a scene," Nora hissed. "Am I? I thought I was just having a conversation with my wife and her old friend." I looked directly at Trent, whose confident smirk had evaporated completely. "Tell me, Trent, does your current wife know about your texting habits? Because Arielle showed me some fascinating screenshots from your cloud backup." That got his attention. Cloud backup, the downfall of cheaters everywhere. They think deleting messages makes them disappear, never realizing everything gets saved somewhere. Arielle had explained it to me in detail, along with how she'd gained access to her brother's accounts during their family's legal battles over their father's estate. "You don't know what you're talking about," Trent said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Don't I?" I scrolled through my phone again, finding a particularly interesting exchange. "Here's one from March 15th. Can't wait to see you next month. H still doesn't suspect anything." That's you, Nora, in case anyone's wondering. And here's Trent's response. "The fool never did pay attention. Makes everything easier." Nora grabbed my arm. "Stop it. Just stop." But I was just getting started. 20 years of marriage, 20 years of trust, 20 years of believing I'd found my person, all of it crumbling in real time while a DJ played Don't Stop Believin', like the universe had a sense of irony. "Oh, but this one's my favorite," I continued, finding another message. "From Trent to Nora, dated 2 weeks ago. The Henderson contract came through. Your husband's recommendation sealed the deal. 40% kickback as agreed." 40%, Nora. That's almost $300,000. I have to ask, where exactly did you hide my cut? The question hung between us like a challenge. Around us, the party continued, but I could see heads turning, conversations pausing. Nothing spreads faster at a high school reunion than fresh gossip, and we were providing premium entertainment. Trent tried to recover. "Look, Holden, I think there's been some misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," I said, cutting him off, "was thinking my wife had more integrity than to sell out her own husband for a construction contract and whatever else you two have been up to." I turned to Nora, who looked like she wanted to disappear into the hotel carpet. "The Marriott keeps excellent records, by the way. Room 608 checked in under your maiden name. 5 years ago during the last reunion, and again 3 months ago during your work conference in Chicago. Funny thing about work conferences, your company doesn't have any record of sending you to Chicago that weekend." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. No smooth PR responses now, no damage control strategies, just the raw panic of someone whose carefully constructed lies were collapsing in public. "Holden, please," she whispered. "Can we talk about this privately?" "Privately?" I laughed, and it came out harder than I intended. "Like you and Trent have been talking privately for the past 15 years? Like the private account you opened to deposit his payments? Like the private messages where you both laughed about what an oblivious fool I was?" That last part wasn't entirely true. I was embellishing based on the evidence Arielle had provided. But the look on Nora's face told me I'd hit close enough to the mark. Trent tried to step between us. "Maybe we should all calm down." "Oh, I'm perfectly calm," I said. "In fact, I've never been calmer. It's amazing how clarity feels when you finally understand what's been happening in your own life." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the valet ticket for Nora's car. She'd insisted on driving separately tonight, claiming she might stay late to catch up with friends. Now I understood which friends she'd planned to catch up with. "Here," I said, pressing the ticket into her hand. "You can find your own way home. Or Trent can drive you. I'm sure he remembers the route to our house. According to Arielle, he's been there several times when I was traveling for work." The silence stretched between us. heavy with implications, and 20 years of marriage cracking apart like ice in spring. Around us, the reunion continued, but I could feel the attention, the whispered conversations, the smartphone cameras probably already recording. Let them watch. Let them record. Let the whole class of 2004 witness what happened when the quiet guy finally stopped being quiet. The drive home felt longer than usual, even though I took the same route I'd driven thousands of times. Past the strip mall where we used to get coffee when we were dating, past the elementary school where Beck took her first steps during a playground visit, past all the landmarks of a life I thought I understood. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, knuckles showing white in the dashboard light. The radio played softly, some talk show host discussing relationship advice with callers. I turned it off. The irony was too much. 20 years. That's how long Nora and I had been married. 23 if you counted the dating years. I'd proposed on the same beach where we'd had our first real conversation, the summer after college graduation. She'd said yes before I finished asking the question, tears streaming down her face, telling me she'd never been happier. Had she been lying then too? Or had something changed along the way, some moment when I stopped being enough and started being an obstacle to whatever she really wanted? I pulled into our driveway, a modest 2-story colonial in a neighborhood that was nice but not extravagant. The kind of place where project managers could afford to live comfortably, raise a family, build a life. Apparently, not the kind of place where construction CEOs' mistresses wanted to stay. The house was dark, except for the porch light I'd left on. Beck was at college finishing her sophomore year at State. She'd wanted to come home for the reunion weekend, but Nora had insisted she focus on her studies. Now I wondered if there had been other reasons for keeping our daughter away. Inside, the silence felt different than usual. Not peaceful, accusatory. Every photo on the mantel seemed like evidence of a lie I'd been living. Wedding pictures, vacation shots, family portraits from Beck's school years. All of it suddenly suspect. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon, the good stuff I saved for special occasions. This felt special enough. The whiskey burned going down, but it was honest pain. Straightforward. Unlike everything else in my life, apparently. My phone buzzed. A text from Arielle. How did it go? I stared at the message for a long moment before responding. About as well as you'd expect. The response came immediately. Are you okay? Was I okay? That was a complicated question. My marriage was over, that much was clear. My wife had been cheating on me for years, possibly decades. She'd used her position to funnel business to her lover, taking kickbacks that should have been mine. She'd made me complicit in my own betrayal, using my reputation and relationships to benefit the man she was sleeping with behind my back. But strangely, I felt relieved, like a pressure I hadn't realized I'd been carrying had suddenly lifted. I think so, I typed back. Thank you. For everything. You deserve to know the truth. The truth. Such a simple concept, but apparently revolutionary in my marriage. I thought back to all the signs I'd missed, all the little inconsistencies I'd explained away, the late nights at work that became more frequent, the business trips that seemed to multiply, the way she'd started dressing differently, buying clothes that were more expensive and more revealing than her usual style, and the way she'd stopped looking at me, really looking at me. When had that started? When had I become furniture in my own life, something to work around rather than work with? My phone rang. Nora's name appeared on the screen, along with the photo I'd taken of her last Christmas morning, smiling as she opened presents under our tree. She looked happy in that picture. Genuinely happy. Had she been thinking about Trent even then? I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. This time I answered. What do you want, Nora? I want to come home. I want to explain. Her voice sounded strained, like she'd been crying. This isn't what you think it is. Really? Because what I think it is pretty straightforward. You've been having an affair with your high school boyfriend for years. You've been using your position to steer business his way and taking money under the table. You've been lying to me about work trips so you could meet him in hotels. Did I miss anything? Silence on the other end. Then, it's complicated. No, it's really not. You made choices. Now you get to live with the consequences. Holden, please. I made mistakes, but we can work through this. We have history together. We have Beck. Beck, our daughter, who was supposed to graduate next year with a degree in journalism, who wanted to be an investigative reporter, someone who uncovered the truth and held people accountable. What would she think when she found out her mother had been living a lie for most of her life? Don't bring Beck into this, I said. You should have thought about her before you decided to destroy our family. I didn't mean for it to happen. It started as just talking, catching up. Then it became more, but I never meant to hurt you. Never meant to hurt me. As if intent mattered when the result was the same. As if the pain was somehow less because it was collateral damage rather than the primary objective. Where are you now? I asked. I'm at the hotel still, in the lobby. With Trent? A pause. He left. Of course he did. When things got complicated, when the spotlight got too bright, Trent Ardell ran. Just like he probably ran from every difficult situation in his life, leaving other people to clean up the mess. Good, I said. That gives you time to think about what you're going to tell Beck, because she's going to find out, Nora. If not from me, then from someone else. You know how these things work in a town this size. You wouldn't. I wouldn't what? Tell our daughter the truth about her mother? You're right. I wouldn't. But I won't lie for you either. When she asks, and she will ask, I'll tell her exactly what happened. Another long silence. Then, what do you want from me? What did I want? The question caught me off guard. For months, ever since Arielle had first reached out, I'd been focused on uncovering the truth. I'd been so consumed with gathering evidence and understanding the scope of the betrayal that I hadn't really thought about what came next. I want you to stay away tonight, I said finally. I want you to think about whether you have anything else to confess before I find out on my own. And I want you to understand that whatever we had, whatever we were, it's over. Holden. I hung up. The house felt even quieter now. I walked through the rooms, seeing them differently. The kitchen where we'd made breakfast together on weekend mornings. The living room where we'd watched movies and argued about the thermostat. The bedroom where we'd shared intimacies that apparently meant more to me than they did to her. In my home office, I opened my laptop and started a new document. If Nora thought this was over, if she thought she could manage this crisis like one of her PR campaigns, she was about to learn otherwise. I might be a project manager, not a construction CEO, but I knew how to plan. I knew how to execute, and I knew how to see things through to completion. The document's title was simple: Next Steps. I started typing. The next morning brought coffee that tasted like ashes and a dozen missed calls from Nora. I let them all go to voicemail, focusing instead on the laptop screen in front of me and the folder Arielle had shared with me months ago. Time to really dig into what I'd been avoiding. The messages went back further than I'd realized. Not just months or years, decades. Screenshots of conversations that started innocent enough, old classmates catching up through social media. But they evolved, gradually becoming more intimate, more secretive, more damning. The earliest ones dated back to 2009, just 5 years into our marriage. Beck would have been 8 years old then, still losing teeth and believing in Santa Claus. While I was working late to make partner at the firm, while I was coaching her soccer team on weekends, while I was trying to be the husband and father I thought my family deserved, Nora was rekindling something with her first love. Saw your wedding photos on Facebook, Trent had written. You looked beautiful. He's a lucky guy. Thank you, Nora had replied. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we'd tried harder back then. Me too, But we were kids. We didn't know what we had. And now? Now we're adults. We know better. The conversation had ended there, but it was clearly the beginning of something. The next exchange was 6 months later, more direct, more dangerous. "I drive past your neighborhood sometimes," Trent had written, "wondering if you're happy. Are any of us really happy? Or do we just tell ourselves we are? I know I'm not. Haven't been since I let you go. Trent, I know you're married. I know you have a life, but I can't stop thinking about us, about what we could have been." And there it was, the moment when nostalgia became betrayal, when wondering became wanting. The messages after that grew bolder, more explicit, more planning-focused. Meeting locations, timing, cover stories. I had to stop reading several times, pouring more coffee, stepping outside for air that didn't feel contaminated by lies. Each message was another small wound, but together they formed a picture of systematic deception that took my breath away. The business arrangement came later, around 2015. Trent's construction company was growing, looking for bigger contracts, more legitimate clients. Nora had just been promoted to senior account executive at her PR firm, handling several major development projects in the county. "I could use someone with your connections," he'd written. "What kind of connections?" "The kind that know which projects are coming up for bid before they're announced publicly. The kind that could put in a good word with the right people." "That's not really how it works, Trent. Isn't it? Your husband works with half the developers in the county. He trusts your judgment. If you told him my company was the best choice for a project, he'd listen. And what would I get out of it? What do you want?" The negotiation that followed was clinical in its precision. Percentages, payment schedules, methods of transfer. They'd turned their affair into a business partnership, with my reputation as collateral and my trust as the currency. The Henderson project was just the latest in a series of contracts Nora had steered toward Trent's company. The Riverside Mall renovation, the new municipal building, the county courthouse expansion, all projects I'd recommended his firm for, based on Nora's enthusiastic endorsement of their work. Work I'd never actually seen, references I'd never checked. A company I'd trusted because I trusted my wife. My phone buzzed with another call from Nora. This time I answered. "Have you calmed down enough to talk rationally?" she asked without preamble. "I'm perfectly rational. Are you ready to tell me the truth?" "I've been trying to tell you the truth. You won't listen." "I'm listening now. Start with 2009. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we'd tried harder back then. Remember writing that?" Silence. Then, "How do you, Arielle, she gave you our private messages." "Your private messages with her brother, conducted while you were married to me. Yes, she gave them to me. All of them. Including the ones where you two laughed about how naive I was." "We never laughed about you." I scrolled through the messages until I found what I was looking for. March 2018. Trent writes, "Does he really not suspect anything?" You respond, "Holden sees what he wants to see. He's always been that way. Makes him a good husband but a terrible detective." That's not laughing at you. No? How about this one from last year? "Sometimes I think I could bring you to his office and he'd introduce you as his business partner." Your response, "Don't give me ideas, though it would be funny to see his face." The silence stretched longer this time. When she finally spoke, her voice was smaller. "You're taking things out of context." "What context makes this acceptable, Nora? What context makes it okay to betray your husband, your marriage, your family for 20 years? It wasn't 20 years, it was complicated." You keep saying that. But from where I'm sitting, it looks pretty simple. You wanted something I couldn't give you, so you went somewhere else to get it. You wanted money, so you sold my reputation to get it. You wanted excitement, so you turned our marriage into a lie. That's not fair. Fair? The word came out louder than I intended. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been telling me you weren't happy instead of pretending everything was fine. Fair would have been asking for a divorce instead of conducting a decades-long affair. Fair would have been not using my name and reputation to enrich your boyfriend. He's not my boyfriend. What is he then? Another long pause. I don't know. At least that was honest. Maybe the first honest thing she'd said in years. I'm coming home, she said. We need to talk about this face to face. No. What do you mean, no? It's my house, too. Actually, it's not. I checked this morning. The deed is in my name only. We bought it before we were married, remember? You insisted on keeping your finances separate back then. Funny how that worked out. You can't kick me out of my own home. I'm not kicking you out. I'm asking you to stay away while I figure out what happens next. Give me that much respect, at least. And if I refuse? Then I'll call Beck and explain why her mother is being unreasonable about a simple request for space. I'll let her draw her own conclusions about what that means. It was a low blow, using our daughter as leverage. But I was past caring about fighting fair. Nora had forfeited any claim to fairness when she'd decided to conduct a secret life behind my back. Fine, she said finally. But we have to resolve this eventually. We have a daughter together. We have shared assets. We have a life. Had, I corrected. We had a life. Now we have lawyers and accountants and a very messy divorce ahead of us. It doesn't have to be messy. It became messy the moment you decided to turn our marriage into a fraud. Everything after that is just consequences. I hung up before she could respond and immediately blocked her number. If she wanted to communicate, she could do it through lawyers. But first, I had other calls to make. Starting with Arielle, who deserved to know how her information had been used, and then Beck, who deserved to hear about her parents' divorce from one of her parents rather than from social media or town gossip. Neither conversation would be easy, but they would be honest, and after 20 years of lies, honesty felt revolutionary. Arielle Seldor lived in a downtown condo that probably cost more than my house. Floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture, abstract art on the walls, the kind of place that screamed success and independence. She answered the door in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, looking younger than her 41 years despite the stress lines around her eyes. You look terrible, she said by way of greeting. Thanks. You really know how to make a guy feel better. She stepped aside to let me in, then headed straight for the kitchen. Coffee? Or something stronger? Because you look like you need something stronger. Coffee's fine. I've been drinking too much lately as it is. She poured 2 cups from an expensive-looking machine, then gestured toward the living room. The couch was white leather, the kind that showed every mark and stain, the kind only someone without kids or pets would buy. So, she said, settling into the chair across from me, I take it the reunion went well. About as well as a public execution, which is what it was, essentially. Good. She deserved it. The venom in her voice surprised me. I'd known Arielle was angry with her brother. That much was obvious from her willingness to share his private messages. But this felt personal in a way that went beyond sibling rivalry. Why? I asked. I mean, I understand why you'd want to help me. But this feels like more than just doing the right thing. She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee cup like it might contain answers to questions she didn't want to ask. Did you know I was married? She finally said. I knew you were divorced. Nora mentioned it a few years ago. 15 years. I was married for 15 years to a man I loved more than anything in the world. We tried for kids, went through 3 rounds of IVF, spent our savings on fertility treatments that didn't work. But we had each other, you know. We had our marriage, our partnership, our plans for the future. She paused, taking a sip of coffee that seemed to require more effort than it should have. His name was David. He was an architect, worked for a firm downtown, smart, funny, kind. Everything I thought I wanted in a husband. Everything I thought I deserved after watching my brother treat women like disposable entertainment. What happened? Trent happened. David's firm was bidding on a project, a big commercial development that would have made his career. Trent's construction company was bidding on the same project. Somehow, Trent got access to David's plans, his cost estimates, his entire proposal. He underbid by exactly enough to win the contract, then hired David's firm as subcontractors for a fraction of what they would have made as the primary. The pieces started falling into place. Trent stole his work. Worse, he seduced David's assistant, convinced her to copy the files, then discarded her when he got what he needed. The assistant felt guilty, eventually told David what had happened. David confronted Trent, threatened to expose him. And Trent destroyed him, used his connections, his reputation, his money to make sure David never worked on another major project in this city, spread rumors about his competence, his reliability, his character. Within 6 months, David's firm let him go. Within a year, he couldn't find work anywhere in the state. The coffee in my cup had gone cold, but I barely noticed. What did David do? He started drinking, started blaming himself, started believing the lies Trent spread about him. Our marriage couldn't survive it. The man I loved turned into someone I didn't recognize, someone consumed by anger and self-doubt and the need for revenge that never came. I'm sorry. David took his own life 3 years ago. Pills and alcohol in a hotel room in Denver, where he'd gone for a job interview that turned out to be another bad end. He left a note apologizing for not being strong enough to fight back, for not being the man I deserved. The silence that followed felt heavy with grief and rage, and the weight of consequences that rippled through lives like stones thrown into still water. That's when I started watching Trent more carefully, Arielle continued. Started paying attention to his business practices, his relationships, his methods. That's when I discovered he'd been doing this for years, using women to get information, to gain advantages, to destroy competitors. Your wife wasn't his first inside source, Holden. She was just his most successful one. How many others? At least 4 that I could document. Wives, girlfriends, employees of competing firms. He has a pattern. He identifies targets, cultivates relationships, extracts what he needs, then moves on. Sometimes the relationships are romantic, sometimes they're just transactional. But they all end the same way, with Trent getting richer and his targets getting hurt. The scope of it was staggering. Not just an affair, not just a business fraud, but a systematic pattern of manipulation and betrayal spanning years. Why didn't you expose him sooner? I tried. I went to the police, to the Better Business Bureau, to the state licensing board. But Trent's smart. He covers his tracks, keeps everything deniable, makes sure there's always plausible explanation for his success. And he has friends in the right places, people who owe him favors or fear his retaliation. But you had evidence. I had suspicions and coincidences. What I needed was someone on the inside, someone who could provide documentation, someone with credibility and standing in the community. She looked directly at me. Someone like you. You used me. I helped you discover the truth about your own life. There's a difference. Was there? I wasn't sure anymore. The lines between justice and revenge, between truth and manipulation, seemed blurrier than they had 24 hours ago. What happens now? I asked. Now you decide what kind of man you want to be. You can take what you've learned and walk away, file for divorce quietly, rebuild your life without looking back. Or you can help me make sure Trent finally faces consequences for what he's done. What kind of consequences? The kind that matter. Public exposure, professional ruin, legal accountability. The kind that prevent him from destroying other families the way he destroyed mine. I thought about David, a man I'd never met who'd been crushed by my brother-in-law's greed and cruelty. I thought about the other women Arielle had mentioned, the other families torn apart by Trent's schemes. I thought about Beck, who would grow up in a world where people like Trent prospered, while people like her father got played for fools. What do you need me to do? Arielle smiled for the first time since I'd arrived, and it transformed her face completely. I need you to be exactly what you've always been, Holden. Honest, methodical, and absolutely determined to see things through to the end. And Nora? Nora made her choice a long time ago. Now she gets to live with the consequences, just like the rest of us. I finished my cold coffee and stood to leave. At the door, Arielle touched my arm. "For what it's worth," she said, "I always thought she was an idiot for not appreciating what she had. Some of us would have given anything for a husband like you." The comment hung in the air between us, loaded with implications I wasn't ready to examine. But as I drove home through streets that felt familiar and foreign at the same time, I found myself thinking less about the marriage I'd lost and more about the possibilities that lay ahead. Revenge, it turned out, was just another word for justice delayed, and I'd been patient long enough. Monday morning brought a different kind of clarity, the kind that comes with purpose, with a plan, with the understanding that some situations require more than passive acceptance. I'd spent the weekend reading through every document Arielle had provided, cross-referencing dates and amounts, building a timeline that read like a masterclass in systematic betrayal. The Henderson Project was just the tip of the iceberg. Over the past 8 years, Nora had steered at least 12 major contracts toward Trent's company, with a combined value of over $4 million. The kickbacks totaled nearly $600,000, money that should have been profit for the legitimate contractors, money that represented jobs and opportunities stolen from honest businesses. But more than that, it represented the systematic corruption of everything I'd worked to build. My reputation, my relationships, my professional integrity, all of it had been weaponized against me by the person I trusted most. I called in sick to work, something I'd done maybe 5 times in 20 years. Then I drove to the county courthouse and spent the morning filing papers, divorce proceedings, fraud complaints, requests for financial records. The clerk who helped me was a woman named Janet, who'd worked there for decades, who knew everyone and everything that happened in our small city. "This is quite a package, Mr. Solen," she said, reviewing the documents. "You sure about all this?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." "Well then, this should be interesting." From the courthouse, I drove to the offices of the Herald, our local newspaper. The editor was a man named Tom Bradley, who'd graduated 2 years ahead of me, who'd built a reputation for investigative journalism that had earned the paper several state awards. He agreed to meet with me based on my name alone. Apparently, my reputation for honesty and reliability was worth something after all. "What can I do for you, Holden?" I spread the documents across his desk like a poker player revealing a royal flush. "I want to tell you about systematic bid rigging and fraud in county construction contracts, and I want to tell you about the people responsible." Tom's eyes widened as he scanned the papers. Text messages, bank records, contract documents, payment schedules, everything needed to tell a complete story of corruption and betrayal. "This is your wife," he said, pointing to Nora's name on several documents. "Yes." "And this is Trent Ardell, the construction guy." "Yes." "You understand what you're doing here? This isn't just exposing fraud. This is destroying your own family. My family was destroyed the moment my wife decided to betray everything we built together. I'm just making sure everyone understands what really happened." Tom leaned back in his chair, studying me with the expression of a man who'd seen too many people make decisions they'd later regret. "Why come to me? Why not just handle this privately?" "Because it's not just about me. Trent Ardell has been doing this for years, using women to gain inside information, stealing contracts from legitimate businesses, destroying anyone who gets in his way. If I handle this privately, he walks away and finds new targets. If I handle this publicly, maybe other people learn what he really is." "And your wife?" "My wife made her choice. Now, she gets to live with the consequences." Tom gathered the documents into a neat pile. "I'll need to verify everything, interview sources, get responses from the people involved. This could take weeks." I understand. And once this story runs, there's no taking it back. Your personal life becomes public property. Your daughter will read about her mother's affair in the newspaper. Your neighbors will whisper about you at the grocery store. You ready for that? Was I ready? The question had been haunting me since I'd left Arielle's condo. Was I ready to burn down everything I'd built for the sake of justice? Was I ready to become the kind of man who destroyed his enemies publicly and completely? I'm ready, I said. From the newspaper office, I drove to Trent's construction site on the east side of town. The Henderson project, the one that had started this whole investigation, the one that had put nearly $300,000 in my wife's secret account. The irony was perfect. The site was busy with workers, heavy machinery, the controlled chaos of a major construction project. I parked across the street and called the number on the sign. Ardell Construction, licensed and bonded, family-owned since 1987. Ardell Construction, this is Trent. It's Holden Solen. We need to talk. A pause. I don't think that's a good idea. I think it's a very good idea. I'm sitting across from your Henderson project site right now. You can come out and talk to me like a civilized person, or I can come in there and we can have our conversation in front of your crew. Your choice. Another pause. Longer this time. Give me 5 minutes. He emerged from the construction trailer wearing a hard hat and work boots, looking every inch the successful contractor. But I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes scanned the street like he was looking for escape routes. What do you want, Holden? I want to understand something. Help me out here. When you were seducing my wife, when you were convincing her to betray her own husband, did you ever think about what it would do to our daughter? Did you ever consider that your actions might destroy an innocent kid's family? It wasn't like that. What was it like? It was complicated. Everyone keeps saying that. But from where I'm standing, it looks pretty simple. You wanted something, you took it, and you didn't care who got hurt in the process. Trent glanced back at the construction site, where several workers had stopped what they were doing to watch our conversation. Look, maybe we made mistakes, but that doesn't mean we have to destroy each other over it. We? There's no we here, Trent. You destroyed my marriage, corrupted my wife, and used my reputation to steal contracts from honest businesses. The only question now is how much of your life gets destroyed in return. What do you want? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to know that the quiet guy you've been laughing at for 20 years isn't as stupid as you thought. And I want you to experience what it feels like when someone you trust betrays everything you've worked to build. Are you threatening me? I'm promising you. By the end of this week, everyone in this town will know exactly what kind of man you really are. Your clients, your employees, your wife, your neighbors, everyone will understand how you've been conducting business. You can't prove anything. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. Hundreds of text messages between him and Nora, bank records showing the kickback payments, contract documents with forged signatures and altered bid amounts. Your sister is very thorough, I said. She's been collecting evidence for years, waiting for the right moment to use it. Turns out, that moment was when you decided to publicly humiliate her friend's husband at a high school reunion. The color drained from Trent's face. Arielle already did. The newspaper has everything. The district attorney has everything. The state licensing board has everything. Your wife will have everything by tomorrow morning, along with a detailed explanation of where you've been spending your evenings for the past 20 years. Jesus Christ. He's not going to help you with this one. I turned to walk back to my car, then paused. Oh, and Trent? You might want to call your lawyer. You're going to need one. The drive home felt different this time. Not the crushing weight of betrayal, not the hollow emptiness of loss, but something cleaner, something that felt like justice beginning to balance the scales. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Nora's name on the screen, calling from a number I hadn't blocked yet. What did you do? She demanded, without preamble. I told the truth. Revolutionary concept, I know. You went to the newspaper. You filed fraud complaints. You're trying to destroy us. I'm not trying to destroy anyone. I'm just making sure everyone understands what really happened. Transparency, Nora. Another revolutionary concept. This will ruin everything. My career, your reputation, Beck's future. My reputation will be fine. I'm the victim here, remember? Beck's future will be better without parents who lie to each other and everyone else. As for your career, I paused, considering. Well, that's the price of betraying your client's trust to enrich your boyfriend. He's not my boyfriend. Then what is he? Silence. Still no answer to that question. I'm coming home, she said. We need to figure out how to contain this. There's nothing to contain. The truth is the truth. It doesn't need management or spin or damage control. Everything needs damage control, Holden. That's how the real world works. Maybe. But I'm done living in your version of the real world. I'm done with the lies and the schemes and the careful management of truth. From now on, things are going to be very simple, very honest, very transparent. You're making a mistake. The mistake was trusting you for 20 years. Everything after that is just correction. I hung up and went inside, poured myself a bourbon, and sat down to wait. Tomorrow would bring reporters, lawyers, questions from neighbors and co-workers and friends who thought they knew the story of Holden and Nora Solen. They were about to learn how wrong they'd been. And so was everyone else who thought the quiet guy would just accept betrayal and move on with his life. Some people, it turned out, were done being quiet. The story broke on Thursday morning with a headline that made my coffee taste like victory. Local construction CEO accused of systematic bid rigging, fraud. Below it, a smaller headline. Wife of project manager allegedly provided inside information for kickbacks. Tom Bradley had done his job well. The article was thorough, well-sourced, and devastating. Every contract, every payment, every message between Nora and Trent laid out in methodical detail. The kind of journalism that wins awards and destroys lives in equal measure. My phone started ringing at 6:30 a.m. and didn't stop. Reporters, lawyers, co-workers, neighbors. Everyone wanted to know how I felt about my wife's betrayal, what I planned to do next, whether I'd suspected anything over the years. I gave one interview to Tom Bradley and kept it simple. I trusted my wife to act with integrity. I was wrong. Now I'm focused on making sure the truth comes out and justice is served. By noon, Trent's construction company had lost 3 major contracts. By evening, his wife had filed for divorce, and his business partners were calling emergency meetings. The domino effect Arielle had predicted was playing out exactly as she'd planned. Nora's PR firm placed her on administrative leave, pending an internal investigation. Her clients started asking questions about other recommendations she'd made, other contracts she'd influenced. The professional reputation she'd spent 20 years building was crumbling in real time. But the most satisfying call came from Beck. "Dad, I just saw the news. Are you okay?" My daughter's voice, concerned and mature beyond her 20 years, was exactly what I needed to hear. "I'm okay, sweetheart. How are you handling this?" "I'm angry. Not at you, at her. How could she do this to our family? How could she lie to us for so long?" People make choices, Beck. Sometimes those choices have consequences they don't anticipate. Are you going to be all right? Financially, I mean? With the divorce and everything? I'll be fine. Better than fine, actually. It turns out your mother's secret account has enough money to cover your college expenses, and then some. Funny how that works out. Is it true what the article says? About her and Mr. Ardell? I closed my eyes, wishing I could protect her from this knowledge, wishing her mother had made different choices. It's true. I always thought he was creepy. The way he looked at her at school events, the way he'd find excuses to talk to her. I should have said something. This isn't your fault, Beck. None of it is your fault. I know, but I feel stupid for not seeing it. That makes two of us. We talked for another hour about the divorce proceedings, about her plans for the summer, about whether she wanted to change her last name. She was handling it better than I'd expected, with a maturity that made me proud and heartbroken at the same time. After we hung up, I poured another bourbon and sat on my back porch, watching the sun set over a neighborhood that looked the same but felt completely different. Tomorrow would bring more reporters, more questions, more consequences rippling outward from the truth I'd decided to tell. My phone buzzed with a text from Arielle. "Saw the news. How are you holding up?" "Better than expected," I replied. "How's Trent handling his new reality?" "About as well as you'd expect. His lawyer called my lawyer this morning, asking if we'd consider a settlement to keep things quiet. And I told them to go to hell. Some things are more important than money." "Like justice? Like making sure David's memory means something, like making sure other families don't get destroyed the way ours did." I understood. This wasn't just about my marriage or Trent's fraud or even Nora's betrayal. This was about accountability, about consequences, about the idea that actions matter and truth matters, and sometimes the quiet guy has to stop being quiet. Another text came in, this one from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Trent. We need to talk." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "No, we don't. Please, I can make this right." "You can't make this right. You can only face the consequences. I'll give back the money, all of it. I'll admit what I did. Just don't destroy my family." The irony was breathtaking. The man who'd systematically destroyed other families was now begging me not to destroy his. The man who'd used my wife to betray me was now asking for mercy he'd never shown anyone else. "You should have thought about your family before you decided to corrupt mine," I typed back. "Actions have consequences, Trent. You taught me that." I blocked his number and went inside. Tomorrow would bring new developments, new revelations, new consequences for choices made in hotel rooms and secret accounts and text messages that were never meant to see daylight. But tonight, for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. The truth was out, justice was in motion, and the quiet guy had finally learned how to make some noise. The reckoning was complete, and it felt exactly like I'd hoped it would. Like the end of one life and the beginning of another, better one.